Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a sci-fi film called Westworld. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. A high-tech amusement park called Delos has attracted the attention of many thrill seekers due to its promise to send their guests on an adventure of a lifetime for an extravagant price of $1,000 a day. Ed, a public relations officer working for Delos, interviews several people who just came from the resort. One guest excitedly tells Ed that he shot 6 people during his visit to Westworld, but Ed clarifies that the people shot were robots. Ed explains that these androids were programmed to look, act and talk like human beings. Moreover, the robots also bleed just as humans do to enhance the experience. John, a returning guest at the amusement park, has decided to take his friend, Peter, to Westworld to help him unwind. On their way to the resort, Peter asks John about what he should expect. John patiently answers his questions and informs him that they'll use real firearms. Soon, an announcer asks the guests to put on their earphones to listen to the orientation. John ignores the announcement, noting that he's already heard the orientation before. The orientation video points out that guests are given a choice to visit 3 distinct worlds that cater to their specific fantasies. In Westworld, guests can reenact the gunfights in the Wild West with the resort's android inhabitants. The guests are also given the opportunity to rub shoulders with the kings and queens of 13th century Europe during the medieval era. As the monitor displays images of the area, the man sitting behind Peter smiles in anticipation of living out his medieval fantasies. In another option, guests can indulge in diverse worldly pleasures available only in the ancient Roman city of Pompeii at the height of its golden age. After hearing about the attractions available in the Roman world, the man behind Peter starts pondering whether or not it's a good idea to send his wife there. After getting off the hovercraft, Peter wonders if the attendants guiding them to the cars are androids. John notes that the only way to distinguish androids from humans is to look at their hands because the robots have imperfect extremities. After wearing the appropriate costumes, they ride a stagecoach to the Westworld Hotel. Upon arrival, Peter notices the lack of amenities in the room assigned to them, but John points out that it's supposed to be that way to give them an authentic experience. Peter mentions that his wife would have loved visiting the shops in Westworld, but John interrupts him, saying he should forget about her because she only took him for a ride. Soon, John and Peter leave their room to visit the bar. Peter orders a vodka martini, but John orders whiskey for both of them instead. He urges Peter to have fun, assuring him that there's no way to get hurt at the resort. When their drinks arrive, Peter chokes on the liquor. Not long after, a gunslinger arrives and starts taunting Peter, saying he needs to come home to his mother because he can't handle his drink. John sees this situation as an opportunity to start a duel, so he urges Peter to confront the gunslinger. Peter hesitates, but with some encouragement, he faces the gunslinger. As Peter reaches for his gun, the other patrons scramble to find a hiding place. When the gunslinger urges him to make a move, Peter draws his weapon and shoots before the gunslinger could even point his firearm at him. As the gunslinger staggers around, Peter shoots him 2 more times. After the other patrons drag the gunslinger's body away, Peter asks John if he's sure that the gunslinger was an android. John assures him that there's no way he would be able to kill a human at the resort. In their hotel room, John urges Peter to try shooting him with his weapon. Peter pulls the trigger, but the gun doesn't fire. John points out that the weapon has a sensor that prevents it from firing at anything with a high temperature. After dinner, John and Peter visit the saloon looking for sensual entertainment. So Miss Carey introduces them to Cindy and Arlette. Peter asks John if the girls are androids, but John doesn't give him a straightforward answer. On their way to their rooms, they suddenly hear gunshots outside. Carrie tells them that men are robbing the bank across the street. Peter suggests joining the robbers, thinking that it might be fun, but John argues being with the girls at the saloon would be much better. Upon entering the room, Peter and Arlette slowly undress and get ready to be intimate with each other. Peter struggles to disclose that he's never slept with a stranger before, but Arlette ignores him and continues undressing. As the gunfight continues outside the saloon, Arlette approaches Peter in bed and starts making love to him. When they finish, Arlette's eyes emit a silvery glow. After the female android leaves the room, Peter tells John that he's having fun at the resort. While the guests are asleep, the resort's employees arrive to pick up the android bodies from the streets. The men load the androids into a conveyor belt that leads to the lab, where technicians perform minor repairs. The chief supervisor calmly guides the technicians, but he's suddenly bothered when he hears about a central malfunction on one of the androids. During a meeting, he reports that breakdowns have been occurring throughout the amusement park for 6 weeks, and it has since doubled in the past week. In addition, central malfunctions in androids continue to rise despite the corrections they've already made. He points out that the pattern of the breakdowns is similar to an infectious disease, spreading from one area to the next. Other scientists are skeptical that androids are contracting electronic diseases. The chief inspector points out that the robots are highly complicated machines, and they still don't know exactly how they work. Despite the problems they've discovered, the technicians prepare to reactivate the androids in the morning before the guests wake up. While Peter takes a bath, the gunslinger knocks on the door and threatens John. As Peter returns to the room, he hears John pleading with the gunslinger, so he prepares to confront the android. Suddenly the housekeeper yells at him for standing in the hall half-naked. The housekeeper screams upon seeing his gun, so Peter decides to barge in and shoot the gunslinger to take him by surprise. After being hit 4 times, the android falls through the window and dies. The sheriff arrests Peter and locks him up, saying he'll have to stand trial for killing the gunslinger. John explains that the shooting was self-defense, but the sheriff ignores him. The sheriff warns John not to bother trying to save Peter because the judge likes to hang offenders. Outside, John asks a woman to deliver some food to Peter. After the sheriff inspects the food, the woman shows Peter that there's an explosive hidden underneath the sheet covering his food. John prepares 2 horses and positions them outside the sheriff's office. Not long after, an explosion occurs, and Peter emerges from his cell. The sheriff goes out to stop them from escaping, but John shoots him twice, making sure that he's dead. John and Peter immediately flee from the town and make their way to the desert to hide. Later, John remarks that they can go back to town and do anything they want because there's no one to stop them anymore. In the medieval world, a guest playing as a knight enters the queen's room for a tryst, but she tells him that the Black Knight is looking forward to a sword fight with him. The queen tells him that the knight has the strength of 10 men, but his sight is weak in the left eye. She assures him that he will win the battle if he stays to the knight's left. The technicians take note so they could reprogram the Black Knight with lateral weakness in the left eye for the next day. As Peter and John rest in the desert, a rattlesnake slithers in their direction. John tries shooting the snake, but he misses. The snake lunges at him and bites him in the arm, so he shakes it vigorously until it releases its bite. When the snake hits the ground, they both shoot it until it stops moving. John notes that the snake is not real, and it wasn't supposed to attack him. The chief supervisor hears about the snake attack in the control room and tells the technicians to take the android snake to the lab. While inspecting the android snake, the technicians discover that its logic circuits fail to respond, but its mechanisms appear to be intact. Due to the malfunction, the resort's administrators decide to stop accepting new guests at the resort, but they still refuse to shut the park down. Later that night, the technicians in the control room start a bar fight in Westworld while Peter and John are playing cards. When one of the patrons drops at their table, John decides to join in. Before Peter could get up, a man grabs him and flings him across the room. They gleefully drink and participate in the riot until they pass out. Meanwhile, the lab technicians install an upgrade on the gunslinger to improve his vision and hearing. In the medieval world, the guest posing as a knight tries to seduce a female servant, but she rejects his advances and slaps him. The chief inspector tells the technicians to send the servant to the lab for central repair, noting that she's not supposed to refuse a guest. However, the technicians couldn't find anything wrong with the android. Later on, the Black Knight confronts the guest at the medieval world as he was looking for something to eat. The guest tries to plead with the Black Knight, but the knight is bent on engaging him in a sword fight. The knight then starts striking him, but the guest manages to block his attacks. Due to the force of the knight's blows, the guest loses his shield, leaving him with only a sword as a means to defend himself. When the knight cuts the guest's arm, the chief supervisor tells the technicians to shut down the androids immediately. However, the knight continues his assault and stabs the guest in the stomach with his sword. After waking up at the bar, John and Peter head back to their room, but before they could enter the hotel, the gunslinger confronts them. In the control room, the chief supervisor orders the technicians to shut all the power down. Meanwhile, John tells Peter that he will handle the gunslinger this time. He urges the gunslinger to make the first move, so the android draws his gun and shoots John in the chest. John stumbles, confused by the sudden gunshot wound. He gets up and tells Peter that he's been shot for real. The gunslinger fires another shot, killing John. The gunslinger asks Peter to draw his gun as Peter tries to make sense of the situation. Back in the control room, the technicians tell the supervisor that they've lost control of the androids. Terrified by the idea that he could die at the hands of the android, Peter decides to run from the gunslinger instead of engaging him. The gunslinger pursues Peter as he gallops away on a horse. The chief supervisor notes that the androids are running on stored charge. Some robots will only last about an hour, but some can still function for as long as 12 hours. Meanwhile, the androids at the Roman world have begun their rampage, killing most of the guests in the area. The chief supervisor tells the technicians to turn the main grid back on, but they fail to get their power back. They soon realize that they are locked inside the control room because the doors are powered by electricity. The chief supervisor tells the technicians to get the doors open before they run out of oxygen. Peter runs to the desert to get away from the gunslinger. As he rides his horse along the hill, the gunslinger sees him and shoots his hat. Peter leaves the horse and decides to lie in wait for the gunslinger. However, the gunslinger spots him and fires his gun at him repeatedly. Fortunately, Peter doesn't get hit, so he runs back to his horse and flees. Meanwhile, the oxygen level starts to drop inside the control room with no way of opening the doors. In the desert, Peter comes across a technician, who appears to be on his way out of the resort, but his car had broken down. The technician hides from him, fearing that Peter is an android, but after realizing that Peter is a guest, the technician informs him that the androids have started to malfunction. Peter tells him that the gunslinger is after him and asks for advice on dealing with the robot. The technician tells him that his only chance is to use acid to impair the robot's vision and create noise to disrupt its hearing. However, the technician warns Peter that his chances of defeating the robot are low because the android will always be one step ahead of him. Soon after Peter leaves, the gunslinger arrives and kills the technician. Peter keeps going until he leaves Westworld and crosses into the Roman world. When he comes across a manhole, Peter goes down and finds himself in the resort's underground complex. Peter soon finds the locked control room, but he discovers that the technicians have all died due to a lack of oxygen. In one of the monitors inside, he sees the gunslinger arriving in the Roman world. Although Peter is nowhere to be seen, the android still manages to track him down using his infrared vision. Peter soon comes across the lab where other androids are kept for repairs. He notices a beaker filled with hydrochloric acid and recalls the technician advising him to use it against the android. The gunslinger soon reaches the lab, but he doesn't see Peter around. Peter lies down on a table, pretending to be a robot, and waits for the android to pass him by. When the gunslinger reaches his table, Peter gets up and throws acid in the android's face. He watches the gunslinger react to the acid burn for a while before finally deciding to make a run for it. Despite the damage to his eyes, the gunslinger continues to chase after Peter. He shoots Peter when he senses him close by, but his gun runs out of batteries, so he throws it away. Peter continues fleeing and soon ends up in the medieval world. When the gunslinger catches up to him, Peter ends up beneath a flaming torch and learns that the android cannot detect him due to the heat. As he turns to run, he accidentally steps on a piece of metal armor, alerting the gunslinger to his presence. In a panic, Peter immediately grabs a torch and sets the android on fire. He watches the robot as it flails around the room in flames. While trying to find his way out of the castle, he hears a woman yelling for help in the dungeon, so he releases her from her shackles. Peter tries to give her some water, but she refuses. When Peter pours out some water into her mouth, sparks suddenly bursts out of her head. Peter backs away in shock, realizing that he encountered another android. As Peter prepares to leave, he runs into the scorched gunslinger, still trying desperately to attack him. The android, however, has totally lost its ability to see, so falls down the stairs while trying to grab Peter. The gunslinger tries to get up one more time, but the robot finally breaks down due to the severe damage to its circuits. Exhausted from his ordeal, Peter sits down on the steps, recalling the resort's advertisement offering him a vacation that he won't forget. The tragedy that happened in Delos highlights the hidden dangers of bestowing sentience to inanimate objects. Programming androids to act exactly like humans for the purpose of entertainment seems like an innocuous endeavor, but problems become apparent as system malfunctions start to occur. Even though the administrators of the park had put some precautionary measures in place, they didn't anticipate the androids misbehaving on their own. The initial investigations conducted by the technicians didn't find any problem with the circuits, which could mean that the androids somehow learned to reject their programming. Due to the errors, the androids seemed to act even more like humans. The female servant in the medieval world slapped the guest trying to seduce her, as any other woman would. The Black Knight ferociously killed the very same guest just to impress his queen. In Westworld, the gunslinger relentlessly pursued Peter in a seeming attempt to seek revenge after being killed twice before. Some would say that such a catastrophe is bound to happen with humanity's continuous pursuit to produce more realistic entertainment. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.